Hey, everybody. Welcome to Andromeda 7, your celestial gateway, your channel for community support, help, friendship, love, knowledge, and just plain being of value to others. Welcome back. If you're new to the channel, it's good to have you with us. And if you are returning, thank you. And tonight is Friday night, and it's time to feed your mind and grow your heart. And tonight's topic is psychic perspectives on the paranormal and the afterlife. And joining us tonight is Nancy Matz and Matt Slozer. So, welcome to the channel, guys. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, all right. Everybody's tuned in.
And a very special hello to all of our veterans, past, present, living, and ascended. Thank each and every one of you for your dedication, your perseverance through often difficult and tumultuous times, and all of your hard work with your best intents to serve, protect, and defend. Whatever the outcome, losses you may have had, or whatever eye-opening experiences that came into your being, know this, please. The lessons learned by you, the knowledge and wisdom you all gained along your way, strengthens our collective. We are one. You are perfect, whole, and complete. You are beloved by all and very appreciated. And you're never alone, regardless of what you've been through. We are one with the universe. Please know this truth in your hearts and minds. Much love to you and your family. And if anyone wants to donate to our veterans, there's many ways of doing that. The Wounded Warrior Project is one of them. At www.woundedwarriorproject.org/donate. Every little bit helps these veterans and their families. Thank you all very much. We appreciate you and we love you. So folks, as you know, our channel is primarily committed to spiritual development and increasing conscious awareness. But we do dabble into the paranormal quite a bit. We bring like-minded spiritual people through our celestial gateway to introduce them to our spiritual community of YouTubers. There's plenty of us who have channels of our own. And we just like bringing like-minded people together to talk. We create a fun space where people can share their stories and expand their knowledge and promote their individual gifts and services to our community. You'll find out tonight a little bit more about these two and what they have to offer. In fact, there are so many synchronicities with both of you, Matt and Nancy. Specifically,
share.
Yes, we will. And, you know, we have, it seems that the most common that we have with you is our paranormal investigations. Also topics pertaining to near-death experiences, past lives, interacting with spirits, helping them to cross over. And some of us even help families connect with their loved ones that have passed on. Dalibor and Matt, it's interesting. Both of you have a background in science, chemistry, working with minerals. And also you both have a background in finances. You have the banking experience, Dalibor, and Matt with his MBA in finances, worked on that. Dalibor and Nancy, you two have a connection there because you're both authors. Nancy has written several books, but you both have blog sites. And you're both putting information out there. And so as an author to author, I thought that was an interesting connection. Matt and I, of course, I don't know how many years Matt's been doing it, but we've been doing paranormal investigations for a long time, and sometimes with some of the professionals that are out there. Let's see, Nancy, you and Laurie and me, and I think Dalibor to some extent, are all small business owners. We have a marketing and sales background, some professional training, professional development coaching and career coaching. That's all part of our background. And both of us, all of us, are very sports oriented. We were all very athletic in our youth.
No, not me. Not
no,
me.
Not you.
Don't forget,
Not you.
Don't forget, I'm the guy who flunked phys ed.
Yeah, that's right. You're the one that's like,
Oh, that's the easiest class out there.
I know.
Nancy was a long distance runner.
And horse. I race horses and I ran races. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I tied them together and did riding ties. If you're into horses, maybe you'll know what that means.
My uncle actually ropes, and he does it for the awards and stuff.
Yeah.
He goes to Vegas
Who
a
does
lot.
it?
My uncle, who is in his 80s, still ropes and rides.
Yeah.
Well, that was my first marriage. And so in 87, I got cancer, got divorced the following year, got into this in 90, and the doc said you're going to live. And I asked for direction. I got into the Spirit of Grace, Holy Universal Christ of the Master, and I stayed there for 15 years. I did leave April of 92, a 24-year career in engineering, and I was in management, and I was responsible. My college education was marketing and business, and so I was actually in HR, and I did soft sales, union grievances, and layoffs. So it was a good training ground for me to get in here because I did 15 years of public lectures and talks and conventions. Just wore me out. So my husband, we got married in 03. He says, "Would you like to move to Tucson?" And I couldn't think of any reason why not. So we spent about 10 years there, where I met up with Matt's group, Port Orange Paranormal. And I was thinking, and I don't remember.
Actually, that's not my that was George's group. That's not my group.
Right, you were part of it, but I was called in on the air, Block Talk Radio, to do investigations of where he was. So we did a lot of insane asylums, and we did old towns, and I'm what we call a remote viewer. So I was always telling them stories when I'm picking up, and so I would pick up what the old towns would look like, and where the knife was buried, and where the murders happened, and I was describing the buildings as it looked at that time. And Allegheny, Allegheny and San Salem, we did that a few times, and then I connected.
Rough places to investigate,
And then I connected. George knew Shar of California Haunts Radio, and I've been a friend of hers since I started cemetery tours in '95. So I've been working with Shar over all these years, doing investigations remotely because I can do it by phone. I don't have to be there. So I always tell her where to put the camera, where the spirits are, and what they're saying and doing. It's kind of fun. And I'm really cheap tourist. I don't have to go there. I could just, where are you going on vacation? Let me see. And I just tell people, stand there and look around. Then I can, when you come back, I can, what day was that? Okay, Tuesday afternoon. Oh, I got it. I can go really cheaply.
That's great.
So
that's that remote viewing skill.
What I found fascinating about your story is that, and it's not unlike Laurie's, it's like both of you got sort of a spiritual awakening, if you will.
Big time.
When you saw a psychic performing psychic readings, you both, something switched in both of you, and you both launched into
what was the universe launching
your
me?
Psychic experiences,
I just accepted the invitation. Let's put it that way. I wholeheartedly accepted it, and I said, "I'll do anything you need me to do to bring this out."
I think all of us have a moment I call the red brick of God. Like, how big a brick do you have to be hit before you wake up? And and mine
or
was over and over, right? And so I was in a difficult marriage, and I was, very good Catholic wife, and we don't divorce, and I got cancer, and then I said, what's the value of life? And I did leave him, and I didn't come in this easily. I discovered through the church the first night, the pastor Ken and Ali Keck were doing the psychometry, and while he was the information, I got it faster, and I jumped up and went, oh my God. And so we read this. He says, did you know what was wrong with you all your life? And I go, I knew something was, my husband used to say it was just intuition. I go, oh, baloney.
It's more than intuition.
Right. And so Matt and I talk, and he's the same age as my daughter.
Well, Matt, how in the heck did you get launched into your paranormal investigating, and then you ended up connecting with Nancy? So was it through a mutual friend through another program, or
I can I can fill you in quick. And I just wanted to add too that I have found a correlation. I know we're going to get into this a little later, but kind of with what Nancy had talked about, and it's not in every case, but I find that people that come close to touching the veil, whether that is a terminal illness scare, a bad accident. In my case, I had a traumatic birth, so I don't even remember mine, but it's interesting that I see things and have things happen. My sister does not. I had the traumatic birth. She did not. So it's interesting that I have seen just in my kind of research and just observing things that there seems to be a really good correlation between people that have those experiences and then kind of getting opened up to having things happen and having those experiences. I've always been interested in this. Have had experiences since I was a kid, seeing things, hearing things. And then probably between like 2002 and 2007 through the internet, seeing that there's other people out there kind of doing this. So it was kind of like a ramp up into getting involved. So between 2007 and 2009 is when I really started investigating. And then what I did was one of my backgrounds is in Six Sigma and statistics. And so I had offered it was a really interesting thing. It's just a shame that it's kind of garbage in, garbage out with reports. I offered Trans-Allegheny is my favorite place. I have a good relationship with them. Real early on, they did evidence reports. And so I offered, I'm like, if you let me have access to the evidence reports, I will like break this down and just see. It doesn't even mean that it's paranormal, but let's say that you get lots of shadow figure activity in Ward E between 1 and 3. Is there a lighting difference? Is there, it could be all kinds of different things, but it was basically looking for trends as to what people were seeing, where and when, to kind of map that out. And then I happened to share that. I got approached by George Lopez on his show, which is Port Orange, which Nancy mentioned earlier. And I talked about that data, and that really generated a lot of interest, which led to me eventually doing my own show on his set of programs, which I got to work with Nancy more on. And then eventually I spun an offshoot of that was the Paranormal Channel, which is the YouTube channel that I now do my show on. So that's kind of the media and how I got into working with Nancy. And then on the other side, I've had my own team since around 07, 09 that we've done our investigations on. And really, the way I would describe my end on this is I don't really have any etched in stone kind of ideas about all that. I view this as it's an exploration. And even when I do my show, I view it as an exploration. So just bring people on, share their experiences. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions on the psychic end of it. I think, people from TV shows and things think, these full messages get beamed in. I view it almost like your senses, vision or hearing. Everybody's a little different, or like color.
Yeah.
You really know what I see as orange. I have no idea whether you see the same orange I see. It's just how that information comes in. And I found that really fascinating, that people get information in very, very different ways. And so it's really just kind of sharing those experiences, sharing that journey, and just kind of all learning together.
So Matt, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that meta study that was done a couple of years ago that found a statistical correlation between all psychic phenomenon and the time period around 1330 local sidereal time.
No, I have not heard. I'd be very interested in that. I have not heard that.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that about a year ago.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in that.
Yeah, very interesting. And there's a definite correlation. I don't know any of the stats by heart, but it's there.
I'll add just really quick, because it was very interesting. I got baptism by fire in doing the show. I got attacked shortly after, and I wasn't like in the field or any of that. And this came out. The show where I presented this came out, and I got attacked almost immediately because people were thinking I'm statistically trying to prove paranormal. And I'm like, I'm not saying. I'm looking for trends that show something is there. I'm not saying it's a ghost. I'm just saying that if there's a huge correlation between people having an experience in a certain place at a certain time, there's probably some explanation for that. So let's dig into that more. As opposed to like in the Trans-Allegheny Asylum, it's a quarter mile end to end, 4-4. So we have a mile of floor space there. Better to look for where people are getting consistent reports of something happening, and hone that in. If you can get correlations on time periods, as opposed to trying to wander that mile of space trying to be in the right place at the right time. And I really wanted to expand it. It's I've run into a little bit of headwinds with everybody with that kind of garbage in, garbage out. You know, you do have, even when I was going through the evidence things, you knew there were people that were deliberately just throwing BS in there. But I still think there's something to it. It's not statistically proving it. It's just if you track people's experiences and you get enough people's experiences tracked and documented, you can start finding patterns that I think could lead to a whole nother
Sure, they speak for themselves.
In on that investigation piece with
your results.
That's fascinating. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention about 1330 local sidereal time. That's when the galactic center is directly overhead.
Okay.
That's
okay.
That would be a significant thing.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I don't want to go long here, but that's the other thing that I think people lose sight on is so much of this is energy and energetics, and there's so much we don't understand on that yet. I know there's a lot of, I'm not a I'm far from a quantum expert, but I know there's a lot of things from the people that are really into quantum physics that kind of like points in that direction. And so with what you're saying with, certain alignments of things energetically, that would certainly make sense. I'm sorry. I think Nancy was going to say something.
No, that's okay. I guess you're not talking language I know, but does that have something to do with the ley lines? Because I do feel like ley lines have something to do with it too.
Yeah, they do.
That would be part of it. It's all
okay.
Makes sense.
I'm talking big broad brush when I'm saying energy, and like almost all of this fall into that bucket.
And I really don't know how that works because I've lived in several different places and I've never been any different. I mean, from Los Angeles to Oregon border, all through Nevada.
You live in Tucson, right, Nancy? So
not now. I live in California.
Oh, California.
I got ill again, and my husband said we should be in California where your children are. So I got sick in 12 and moving 13. So I was there with his Port Orange Paranormal for about 2 years.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot. We all have stories.
Yeah,
I've kissed
no
that
doubt.
Blarney Stone. I have a girlfriend. We talk a lot. And he said, well, in our life, we've kissed that darn Blarney Stone 2 many times. It's part and parcel to being in this world because I work a lot. I've been at it for 32 years. You can't work and live and breathe this every day without it taking its toll.
That's fascinating to me.
Known,
that you have that much
me.
time and energy into it. That's what you're taking back to the collective when you do go is going to be phenomenal, in my opinion.
I'm a burner anyway, so
big burner. One of there's so many things that you've done with your talent and your gifts to help people in so many ways. Your hospice care, the hospice care, and helping people with transitioning. I'm very interested in, and I know you've done this so much that it just drives you nuts because I heard you on Matt's show. But I was attracted to your conversation on his program about 5 or 6 months ago, I think it was. I have had a couple of experiences where I've been able to, and Laurie has too, and I'm sure Sophia, where we help people connect with deceased loved ones.
Oh yeah.
But in particular, helping to find people that are missing or have been murdered. And and you saw the questions I sent. One of the questions was, and you answered it on Matt's show because I went back and watched it, and I'm like, so you do get contacted by the ones that have passed through,
and murdered people. But that doesn't always make. Yeah, it's not easy. It's one of the things I probably don't get involved with a lot. Lost souls, I got involved with it quite a bit for a lot of years. I was part of the Arizona. The detective that started the FindMe 2 movement, FindMe2.com, and he was a private detective, and he had people like us all around the world, and we had to prove ourselves. And Professor Gary Swartz double-blind tested me on TV, so it was like I paid the price and got into the group. It was probably the hardest thing I've worked with because he would send us literally pages and pages, and it's really hard to work that after a while. A lady in Australia, I lost her name in my mind here. She called about a murder case. And when I saw the boy and I started talking to him, she says, you need to touch base with this group. And I did. And it's not the easiest way to go. I'd rather have the dead person show up in my office or have people call me and talk about it. And I do a lot of that. Believe it or not, I do more missing dogs and animals.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I have too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Animals
Yeah.
and
You have,
pets and,
Theresa. Yep.
yeah, or children
trouble
who
with-
have disappeared during the and in the
yeah.
neighborhood. You know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's and animals are so much easier. I've had dead people show up at my office just before I moved
Yeah.
down from Northern California, the Oregon border, to where I am with my husband. And we lived in two different places for a while. And I had this dead girl show up there, and I thought, how can you help somebody when you can't hear the last name? Or, I get a description, I know what she looks like, and I never saw anything on the news. The people I saw
Yeah.
is dead, recently dead. In fact, I'm not positive. I think it was Port Orange Paranormal. They were talking one night, and I was talking to a gal who just died in a canoe, and like a few weeks, and someone on the other side was tap 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 on the computer, and they validated that. And I thought to myself, well, she was found. I don't know if you remember that, but she was found, and I thought, well, why did she show up? Why am I supposed to see her if she was found? Maybe to validate that she is okay, but she was wet from her, and she says, I just died in a canoe, and she had long blonde hair and everything, and I thought that was really odd. And the girl
Yeah.
that showed up in Hornbrook, I thought, I can't help that one either. And then it's frustrating because this young man, a couple women friends of mine were coming down from Reno to Sacramento, and
I live in Reno.
they're very intuitive. And on the way down, they stopped because they heard this young man call their name, and they, hello, Nancy. And I says, oh my gosh, his feet are next to the freeway, his hip on the hill, there's leaves covering, and they must have searched half the afternoon. And he kept chattering away at me, and I thought, well, why don't they just let me know how close they are? Why don't they tell me who murdered them, or if he died there? There's a lot of loose ends, and you can't always help them. It's just really frustrating. I'd almost rather deal with someone who's run away or lost,
Yeah.
because it gets frustrating. Go ahead.
You do a lot of past life regression, and you remind me a lot of like Dolores Cannon in a way. So you're like one of those pioneers because let's see, if you were married in '67, you've been around a while, and I must say that you do not look your age. So it's definitely a compliment.
It's
yeah,
American
it's the Indian in you, that's for sure. Yeah,
I don't take any credit for it at all. just what it is,
Yeah, but you've been in this for a very long time, and past life
32
regression.
years.
Yep, and you can also see people around other people, so you can pick
I've
up on
had
those
a lot of fun.
I
think
bet
we did this on Matt's show too, as well as Shard. The people would write in, and I'd describe to them who was standing next to them, dead person. And so I've done that a lot of different shows. It's really fun, but it's distracting because we're not talking about that tonight. But it's really,
but it's fascinating.
At some point, you have to pick your battles, and Matt, he's really interested in that side of it. I'm just curious. And when I was getting into this, I've been this way. I saw my dead father after he got killed by a drunk driver when I was 6, and somewhere in all our stuff, I would tell his mother, "Daddy visited us last night." And it's funny how it's like embedded in my mind what that looked like. He was standing there and looked really odd to me. And Bonnie, my sister, was asleep, and he looked different. Like there was a halo around his whole body, not just his head like you think.
So it was the etheric body.
Yeah, and I thought he was just talking, how are you? And I go, fine. They're like, okay, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well,
I speak to my father who's passed, 4 years ago. Yep, I do too.
And it stopped after a very short time. I think he visited 3-4 times. And somewhere in all our stuff was reel to reel of my telling her at 6 years old what he looked like. Wow. What he was doing. So that's how it started. I was born this way. And and there's so few of us that it's okay to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you want to spend your energy doing?
Right.
Well,
and you don't want to waste your time convincing others either. Because
I don't care anymore.
They're just
Who
not
cares?
going to get it. Yep, exactly.
Yep. I give a about what people think. As
I tell you,
Matt,
when you're young and you get these experiences coming in, and you're so young, if you're in a controlling, like I was from a very strict Roman Catholic, Irish Italian family, and you didn't talk about this kind of stuff, and they immediately assumed it was a child's imagination, or they just cut you off. Yep. They would prevent you from talking about it and experiencing it, And as you get into your teens, well, then they think you're on drugs or Right,
my mother did not like the gift at all. My father had it, and
your
she would
father
shake
had
her
it.
fist, shake her fist at me like this. And of course, then when I was adult, she says, "Well, I really have had the ability." And I says, "Oh gosh, I got the Indian spirits on one side and the Irish leprechauns on the other."
That's awesome.
It's funny. I'll just quick add. My sister, she comments a lot. She's like, "I'm glad you see it and I don't," because she gets freaked out by it. And me, like, I'll walk into my kitchen and there'll be like a little blonde haired girl like in the corner, looking at me. And at this point, I'm just kind of like, "Oh, wow, that's kind of interesting," and just going about my thing.
So you don't converse? You don't converse with it, Matt?
I can try. I will say my end, unlike I am my and maybe
like,
it's just
hey,
my
what's up?
exploration
What
part.
you doing over there?
It's not.
I
guess mine's not refined. It's just I'm experiencing these things, but I'll say sometimes I will get what I would view as communication, and then sometimes I will just see things, but a lot of times they don't sync up. Like I will generally won't see something and
that
try
makes
to talk,
sense.
and then it'll talk back. So I'd say mine's,
that makes sense.
It's probably, not as good of an ability and more scattered. So I have more experiences, but I haven't been able to really channel it to things that are very effective.
Wow.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't care. I feel people around me all the time. And especially, so I moved out here, Oroville's a town. And there's 2 cemeteries, and my husband has lived here 2 years for health surgery. And so he drove me around, and we had to pass. He drove me around, and we passed 2 cemeteries. And I go, "Oh no, I don't want to look. I don't want to look," because the minute you see them, they see you.
Yeah,
and
like I know she
think,
can see
don't
me.
Even bother.
Hurry, let's rush her.
And the malls are worse. Restaurants are worse than that. And I try to avoid it. I will not look at my block. It's like a walnut shelf. Because I have control. I don't want to, unless I want to see Grandpa around you or somebody else.
Yeah.
I just, because I can feel my mother a lot. Yeah, someone's it. I got a couple people in here. Oh,
I only had one. I'll share. Go ahead.
Like
Sorry,
Sophia.
I was gonna say I only had one situation where it actually I feel like I did a communication and interacted, and it kind of relates to the one question you had posted. We had a health issue. One of my family members was passing away, and so we had family come, or friends come to help. And while we were all at the hospital, my one friend was actually pushed down our basement steps by nobody. Just felt the thing. So at that point, I get out all my equipment. I'm like, okay, we got to figure out who this is. At the same time, I always would get cigarette smells around me, and I have figured out who it was that they're trying to communicate. And really, it wasn't me that they needed to talk to. It was another family member. So it was really interesting. So I just I'm like, look, I'm not the person you need to talk to. Yep. You need to go to talk to, person X. And so what's interesting is I never told that person. A couple weeks later, I'm on the phone with them, and they're like, "Matt, this is the weirdest thing. All of a sudden in my study, I'm getting the cigarette smell all around me." And so then I told them the story. I'm like, "Well, look, this person came through. They said they wanted to talk. I shipped them up your way. So whatever you guys had to hash out, you need to hash out." That's really the only good example I have of something that kind of coherently went.
Yep.
That's interesting because I've had experiences with spirits and stuff like that for a long time, and I have a spirit attached to me that I've had since 1991. But it's a benevolent spirit of an old doctor lady whose house I bought in 1991. She died in that house. She was eaten by all her cats, and her spirit watches over me to this very day. And she especially loves to hang out in the bathroom. And that what triggered me is your mention of the cigarette smoke. She doesn't like my cigarette smoking.
Okay.
She especially doesn't like it in the bathroom. She's communicated that many times. And usually anytime I talk about her, something anomalous or weird happens in the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
But she's a positive, a benevolent spirit, I would say. So that's why I keep her around. I haven't banished her or anything.
I've had a similar situation where I could smell cigarette smoke, and I smelled it for about 2 weeks. And finally, I asked my guide, "What is this cigarette smoke thing going on?" And he explained to me that it was someone trying to get my attention. So I said, "All right, I'm open. Let's chat." And figured it out, passed on the message, and all was good. But 2 weeks, and I said, listen, don't do that to me anymore because I don't smoke cigarettes and I really don't want to smell it.
Mhm.
But he's like, that was the only way she could get your attention. So I thought, well, it worked.
Well, we had a school that we investigated in northern Maryland, almost on the eastern shore up near Delaware, between the border of Delaware and Maryland. And that school, there was one particular classroom you would go into, and it just reeked of like bourbon, like whiskey and smoke.
Yeah.
But it didn't always smell like that. And so,
Like a saloon?
like a saloon. Come to find out, through the investigation process and talking to the local townspeople, one of the teachers that used to teach there when the school first opened back in the, I guess, mid 1930s, even earlier than that, he had been ex-military. He had a heavy drinking problem. He smoked cigars, and he was doing things to the girls in the school in the back room behind his whiteboard or behind his. And so if you walked in there, you could pick it up. And I went in there and felt all the energy before I even knew the story. And I just came out sick to my stomach and nauseous because I felt this energy.
That's awful.
It didn't feel good. It was like an imprint. I don't think he was
Residual.
there. I think it was
Yeah, you picked
Residual,
up on it.
non-intelligent.
Yep.
There was
come to find out during the
Stuck.
Yeah.
during an investigation with Shar, California Haunts, Placerville was one of the more western towns in our community. And she went did a bakery or something. And she asked me to call her up and tell her what was in there. And I saw cows going through it. And then I saw that sickening feeling. Well, they researched it and found it was a butcher shop at one time. And that was probably the worst I've ever felt because I felt the death of all the animals.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That was very, very unusual. Yeah.
What gets me, since you got the visuals of the cows,
Yeah.
I get visuals too. Laurie is more of a she's starting to get the visuals now, but she's more of a feeling,
Very intuitive.
intuition, and feels the energy. She can almost describe something that occurred in a past life without seeing it, like I do. I get the pictures,
Yeah,
and I feel things too. Yeah. So we all experience these things slightly differently. And Matt, when you and Nancy, Nancy, you have done paranormal investigations, right? You've been called in to help as a psychic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Lots.
Do you do the automatic writing, or do they when they communicate with you?
Very. I don't write. I just hear them. I hear people, see people, and I can see the insane ones a little bit. It depends on the spirit. It was a curious question about spirit versus ghost, and so the paranormal, the energy of the insane asylum. You can appreciate someone going insane. Now, when they're over on the other side, how do you think they see themselves? Well, they're going to see their arms like this, and they're going to see the reflection of their face in the glass. But a lot of them don't see the rest of them. I mean, they're not paying attention. So when they come over the other side, you get a big blob. And appreciate, even when I was doing cemetery tours, you get bits and pieces of people. Now, don't look down. I'm going to make you sit there for a week. Now, tell me what pair of socks you have on. It's like we forget what we look like. See, and so a lot of times as you see orbs or partial bodies, it's how long were they there? I tell you, depending on the body, and there's people, we don't have enough hours for me to talk about this. People who have damaged bodies or people who got large or crippled, they don't want to show that. They're going to show the best part of them or the back in time. So I see that. I describe people. I'm very, very visual. And that's because I was engineering detail, but an artist detail. So my brain is like it doesn't.
It's wired
people say,
that way.
Someone said to me, "You're kind of weird," and I go, "Works. I don't care." I go one side versus the other side, and I think that's benefited me. Yes, I get all the emotions too, but not as much as this visual. And I'm so grateful. Yes, I pick up a lot of stuff. The Ione Children's Home. Char took me there once in person because I wanted to get out of town, right? And I wouldn't even go in. I felt, oh, danger, Will Robinson, don't go in. And I was panicking. And so they had another psychic, and she fell on the second floor. There was a place that she shouldn't have walked. She walked, she fell through. And I must have picked up, I was the one who was going to fall through, and I didn't go, but she did. She got injured. So I can pick up all the, can you please explain the difference between soul and spirit? I always think the same word.
Well, it's very, I'll put it this way. In my language, which is Czech, the word for spirit is duch, and the word for soul is duše, which is like the female version, the same word, but in the female tense. So it's actually male and female aspects of the same creatures, so to speak.
Soul, spirit, and ghost is all the same to me. It's how their attitude is.
Ghost and spirit is the same word.
Don't have a body. Yeah.
I'll just call out then. We were talking earlier about connections with ethnicities, and I know it's not exact, but part of my ethnic background, I'm German and Slovak, so I know it's not the same as Czech, but it was all one country.
Almost the same, so. Yeah. Yeah, it was one country. Yeah, for 80 years.
Well, when you're investigating, or even when you're not investigating, and you get that visual and you know there's a spirit there, what is your understanding so far of all the years you've been doing this? And I'll ask you both this question. Why are they still there?
I love that.
Why have they not passed through and recycled or gone wherever?
That's a great question.
There was a movie that came out, and it was called The Ghost. And this, his first name was Casey Affleck, I think it was. He actually won an Academy Award for the role. And all you see is him with this blanket, a sheet over it with the little eyes. And I thought it was of course, I watch movies versus I read books and articles. Yet when you're given a presentation, talk to a group, you go reference a movie because people get it. And he actually was a spirit, but he come into the house and he got bored of seeing himself, so he put the sheet on him. And they had decades and decades go by. And one day he said, this is a very good example. So why was I sticking around all this time? She's not coming back. Boom, they're gone. So they do wake up. In my world, they do wake up. The point is, and this is very interesting, on the East Coast, there's a very important, very big hotel. Matt, were you with me or somebody? I can't remember now.
Yeah, I don't think I was with you.
Bob or something. Anyway, we were going to do this, and he said to me, I know you. You're going to talk to these people. What do you want me not to do? He says, the owner does not want us to cross anybody over. Their business relies on those spirits staying there, and those ghosts. Pardon me? I go, Well, they will wake up because they'll get wondering where their other loved ones are, or they'll say, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Even the insane asylum, they can't stay that way forever. How long is forever to them? And sometimes I tell people investigations, go in with a heightened sense of excitement, curiosity, and that energy will make you feel, because I usually feel them first, and then I look at them and go, well, who are you? And then they'll work real hard to let me see who they are, and they all different costumes. People are so curious and of us. And and I said, well, what are you doing here? Well, and I've done a lot of crossovers.
That's the curiosity. It's the curiosity. That's why she sticks around. That's why my spirit sticks around me, because she took an interest in me from the.
It's our we have to go with curiosity to find them. And I say when I'm doing an investigation that I can they'll allow me to cross the person over. I mean, too many to count. Matt has, we have some history with that, but you have to go in with a lot of curiosity and a compassion and sympathy. And then you have to go in there after that. You go, I am so sorry you're here. And I'll talk to them and go, then so how long have you been here? What year do you think it is? I mean, I'll just bring all kinds, depending on what they're wearing. I can tell how many centuries or whatever.
Sure.
And people call me from other countries to do this. The hardest one was China. I did, and the Chinese family, that's kind of different culture. But I do a lot of compassion, a lot of sympathy. And then lastly, I try to logically think them to change. And don't think I'm weird, just like flow with it. I can see the person they're going to be greeted by. And so in today's world, some of the people I help pass over in the family, or after they died, I'll usually describe the person that greeted them. Oh, I know exactly who you're looking at. So they know I can't make it up. And so when I tell them, okay, the person that greeted that person, and we have one going on right now. So it's kind of like I talked to this client today and I says, oh no, his father's there waiting for him. Oh no, because they don't want this man to die because there's a kid getting married and they want him to live long enough. And I says, oh my God, they usually show up really strong about 2 or 3 months before death. And then when I describe him, my client goes, oh no, you describe his dad. I go, well, guy's 80 something, fell down some stairs. That's going to be hard. Yeah. So with that, I'll describe the person that I did I've done too many. So I like the one, like which story? Tucson. And this family called me up because there was a lot of noise. And so I walked in and there was this pioneer woman, like Tucson's like that. And she was short, like 4'5", 4'6" or something, round as she could have been tall. And she says, I don't want to leave. And the daughter who's very intuitive jumped back like this. And I said, I'm not making anybody leave. I just want to know why she's here. And all the energy went, because they didn't really want her to leave. They just wanted me to come over. And so all the energy went, I said, why are you still here? And she just missed children. And so she's been floating around to her death, heavens knows, 100-something years, because she was a mom, grandma, and she looked like she was older, kind of put your mind, whoever's intuitive, look in my memory. And she was in a brown, Western, pioneer looking. And she just loved these teenage girls. The girls were just so cute. And she was just looking at them all the time like,
wow. That's fascinating.
Really funny. I think that's what keeps me going.
Do you find this to be the case for, like, the general consensus is that I hate to say the word, but the majority of them are just don't want to let go?
No.
They don't want to.
They
don't
really
know
don't
they're
want
dead,
to leave.
or
they don't know how to, or they don't want to, or both.
They're like living a life that they didn't live while they were alive, vicariously through the people that they follow.
Literally, they ignore the people who came to get them. I don't want to leave. What are you talking about? I'm not dead. Yeah. And then when they realize they're dead, they go, I'm not finished. You got unfinished business. You got people who are afraid to pass over. Oh my, I got hell on the other side waiting for me.
One thing I was told when we were doing investigations, Nancy, Matt, I was told, don't assume that they want to cross over, number one.
Right.
And that you should help them cross over. It has to be their choice and their decision because it's free will.
They are
so if they ask us, I help, I'm cold, I'm lost, I don't know what's going on, how do I get there? How do I get out of here? That's one thing, and we can work with them to help them.
Depending on how confused they are.
Yeah. So you leave them alone sometimes, right? Yeah.
I have to. They haven't been told to leave them alone. I can tell them where they are so they can take their equipment. But when I was in this, I had been in here 5 years or something, long time ago. And I opened the door because again, I'm an athlete and I'm a big burner. And I've always had a lot of energy, even at this age. But when I was in it, I was so excited because I was doing these things that didn't make any sense to me. Oh my God, I'm seeing spirit. People walk through me, these people. Like, I'm here, let me show you. I go, oh, like this. Ooh. But all of a sudden, I had people coming in my home that were still in cars, or one was in a canoe, and someone laying on the floor, ground burning up against a barn. And I said to them one day, I says, why are you guys showing up? And I'm sure it still happens, but I ignore them. I don't have time for it. And they said, well, there was a light, and I kind of looked at you, and all of a sudden, I'm next to you. I can't answer that. I don't get it, but that's not the same as someone stuck in a location. This little tiny West pioneer woman, clearly she didn't want to pass over because she was in a gown of that era. And she was solid enough for me just go, whoa, look at you. And she says, I just love these girls. You're going to make me leave. She must have been afraid. Why are you afraid of me? I'm so easy. You know? And it's like, what are you doing here? Well, they don't have to leave. I mean, who am I? I'm just a human being.
Yeah, but they recognize your light just like a candle in a dark room.
I don't know. I don't want to put any energy to. I mean, any more thinking about it.
Yeah,
but it happened enough times that I thought I must vibrate or people like this in their darkened environment.
That's right.
So I must have been closer to them, but didn't make sense to me as some two teenage boys in a wooden out log
Mm-hmm.
got killed in Louisiana. Now, that's pretty far. How did they find me in California? I can't figure some of this out. There was a
Ley
French
line.
kid, possibly, a Frenchman in a canoe. Not the different era. It was during French. So you and I spent money and bought Louisiana. Okay.
Mm.
During the conflicts that were down there, they had the French armies come something, and he had gotten shot while he was canoeing from one spot to the other.
French and
And he
Indian
come
War.
right, and so I'm not French. I got the gist of what happened. He was going across from here to there, and he was still going there. And I says, "Don't you? How long?" That's the guy. I asked him, "Well, how long you been doing this?" And his mother was there, and he couldn't see her. He wouldn't. Trying to remember what happened. I did make him pay attention, but I never knew what happened.
Wow.
I was going to add. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely.
I was going to add one thing to your the light piece is, and this might be a weird analogy, but if you've ever had experiences with on a street corner or driving on the median with like panhandlers, and so you figure like all these people are going by and ignoring them. Somebody makes eye contact with them, and they're like, "Oh, they see me," and then they'll go and try to interact. That's kind of how I view the spirit. There's so many people here that don't have the ability.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just cruising by. All
and then
of a
they
sudden
go, "Oh, you
like
can
Nancy,
see me."
And they're like, "Oh, she can see me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good
like the
analogy.
movie Ghost Town. You guys have
Yes,
to see that.
exactly. Exactly. Love that movie.
I can understand that one.
And then one other quick thing that you touched on that I just want to add. I agree with the why do they stay here? The one thing I wanted to add, Nancy already touched on it, but if you think about people's belief systems, if I passed on and I felt there was something questionable in my background or something questionable that I may have done, that I have some fear of what may lie on the other side, that I think is another motivator to keep people around.
And that probably has happened more than we realize, especially military kids who unfortunately had to kill other people.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
And
completely.
yeah, just there's so many stories you could almost go insane trying. And I think to myself, I could spend times all my life just doing rescues, and I just don't have the energy. It almost breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was a book written, a lady was on Coast to Coast, the Fringe Dweller, I think it was, and she goes to sleep at night, and in her sleep state, she then reaches out and does rescues. And I thought she was fascinating.
That is fascinating.
So I think that's the name of the book, The Fringe Dweller. It means she's on the fringe of. So someone look it up and see if I was right. And Coast to Coast, type that in the top book, Fringe Dweller. I can't remember her name. She's 10 years back.
Wow.
But I always thought that was really curious.
Sophia, you see people, you see the non-living, so to speak. What's your experience with
non-fleshed?
Yes.
Disembodied energy.
Yes, that just came to mind.
It depends on how my body is functioning, because I believe we all have clairs, and depending on the health of the chakra, that will be the strongest ability that will step forward. For me, it has not always been sight. For me, it is touch. I'll have spirit put their hand on my shoulder, or, touch me on my feet, stuff like that. As far as seeing like a full body apparition as a child, absolutely. But like what Matt was talking about, when you connect with a spirit, there's what I call a handshake. So you have to allow the interaction as a sensitive. There are boundaries with any energy that you work with, whether it's had a body or not. Long story short, visually, I see sparks, auras, and everybody's symbolism is different. That was kind of touched on earlier, that Spirit's going to use what you have to communicate with you what they're wanting to say. I would say the big difference between residual and intelligence is important to mention, because they can feel the same at first, but when you develop your skills of communication with the unseen, I would say discerning exactly what energy is present and if it's worthy of a conversation. Is it healthy? Is it balanced? Is it, because I believe in natural and universal law as well. Like attracts like. And if I'm supposed to be in a situation with a particular spirit for teaching me or helping them, I think I'm very careful when I go on investigation, because certain places can have too much concentration of investigation. And the spirits, when I went to one location, they were hiding from me. And I'm like, this is odd. You guys have this big story. And
they're here again.
yeah, and they kind of communicated to me that they were tired of it. They wanted a break.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking against, places that do this, because I like to investigate. But when there is a story with a location, there's more than just the popular spirits there. So when I get that kind of feedback, I'm like, okay, understood. Who are you? Because if they choose to communicate, they might not be on the brochure. It might be something recent, like Nancy's saying, instead of going there and digging up, something popular, be authentic. What's your intention? That's how I approach it. Sorry if I went on a little.
No, I love it.
I wanted to add one quick thing here, because I think it's a difference between probably me and Nancy and Sophia, and people that have been on my show will know this. One thing I found really curious, when I go out and investigate, I had somebody else that I would go out with, and she gets all this like peace and love stuff. I get hatred. I get Matthew Slozer die. Matthew Slozer, we hate you. I get F-bombs constantly.
Yep.
So that honestly filters my interactions, as opposed to maybe like I'm already looking at, okay, so what are these things trying to interact with me? You're thinking of like attracts like. If I'm for whatever reason attracting attention to things that obviously don't wish me well, how am I going to interact with that? So I probably have a little more walls up and do a little less interaction than Nancy and Sophia would for that reason. I just want to kind of call that out.
Yeah,
that I find that interesting
sense.
that I get that like hatred directed to me.
Yeah.
Preparation. Prayer, clearing yourself, your body, and your mind with whatever modality. Yeah. Sorry, Nancy, go ahead, hon.
No, I'm going to add, we just have all different opinions. I love it. So when I do classes, and I've not done many classes in the last 10, 15 years, but I was at one time. And I tell people, recently I just did a lot of talking on this. It's curious that I married a Catholic. And I remember being in the church and watching spirit people walk around, and it made, like something was wrong. But I come from a very background with a lot of different churches. So I'm not locked into one. And I think if you're brought up in a spiritual environment where that's exorcists and demons and everything, and it's part of your energy, like I go, I want to say that I did get my ministry the old-fashioned way. I started hard, and I got it after 2 years. Dr. Reverend Judy Fisher, Sedona, Arizona, Church of the Living God. And I told Matt, and I've talked about this, I have unwavering faith. No one's going to mess with me. I mean, ever. And I think that my attitude has helped me a lot. If I see someone in turmoil of spirits, I go right there.
See that reminds me of an experience.
I don't get bothered.
That reminds me of an experience I had a couple of years ago. I was late at night driving from Kladno to Prague, and I stopped by the village of Lidice. If any of you know what happened there, this was a village that was wiped out by the Nazis. The whole village was executed, and I had to relieve myself, and I did so behind a tree. And as I did so, I closed my eyes, and I could clearly see this like demonic entity like reaching out from the depths of hell, trying to grab me. So I just opened my eyes and it was gone. But every time I closed my eyes, I could see that same exact demon again. And I was like, yeah, well, that's like a generalized spirit of, or like I don't know what I would call it, like insane. The general vibe of the energy of what happened there. Yeah.
I think a lot of that, remember, my opinion only. I think that what we see is demons and everything is actually a spirit that's gone completely insane.
Yeah,
so you might have
gone
completely insane. And then they do get, Shar and I talked about it or how much can I say?
But do you think it could have been like a collective spirit or like an individual
egregore.
entity?
More,
Mhm.
I don't know how collective would work, but I feel like what you were seeing was somebody who was doing the killing who got killed there, and he just
Could
trying to
be.
grab onto real life. Like, I don't
Mhm.
want to be here, and he might have been buried right where you're standing, so he
Mm.
reached up
Mhm.
because he wanted your life force.
Mhm.
And that's why
Good
people
point.
like us, Sophia, and all this,
Ooh.
because I'm an athlete all my life, I have a lot of energy. Yet I'll talk to people, talk all day long, not like when I used to.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, I'm tired, but everybody who talks to me go, "Oh, I feel so good." Well, honey, you just took a big chunk of me. And
Yeah.
that's how it works. So you could appreciate if they lay in the ground how hungry they are.
Yeah. Your
You're
light
Mhm.
real
is the life
close,
force. Your
and they've
light
been
Mhm.
is
laying there.
the
They
life
don't want to
force.
go on.
Yep.
They want supper, honey, and you are just convenient.
Yeah.
Mhm. Interesting.
Gotcha.
I have a
Interesting.
I have
Matt,
a different view.
Uh-huh.
Again, it's just world according to Matt, but it's related. I feel there are, in addition to human spirits, there are different planes, different dimensional entities, whatever you want to call it. And I honestly think
Mhm.
angels. It's semantics. It's
Mhm.
something that isn't. And so I believe, again, going back to that energy and kind of to what Nancy said, I think those other entities can get attracted to energies in this that happen in this world. So in the
especially
case of what you
powerful ones.
experienced, a lot of
Mm.
negative stuff happened there, whether it feeds on it, whether it's attracted to it, whether it just feels more comfortable in that environment.
Mhm.
Another theory could
Mhm.
be that this is just something from somewhere else that wants to hang out there. And I feel like those things get then labels from different traditions, jinns, demon, whatever. I
Mhm.
think they're
Mhm.
just labels for these things that exist in another plane or dimension that can
Mhm.
interact here but isn't part of us. If that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, it
I,
Mhm.
does.
Yeah,
why
it
not?
does make sense.
Yep.
Mhm.
I have
I think there's
another question for you. It's like a
yeah.
It's like a two-part question. We did some shows on past life regressions. I know you caught
Oh,
one of ours, Nancy's, that we were doing. Yeah,
oh yeah, the other
and we
show,
were explaining some of our
and I loved it.
experiences of.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we really enjoyed that
Mhm.
show. Um,
We were really
we have a lot of
validating for
fun.
ourselves,
Yeah, we're
all the
really into
information we had
validating.
been
Mhm.
getting. Yeah. And that helped
Yeah.
validate it.
Go
But
ahead.
I wanted to know if with your experiences in helping your clients do regressions. I know you do past life regressions, and it's something I'm quite curious about, and that is I've only have remembered the actual physical dying one time. Now I've got 15 or 18 of these past life experiences that I can remember, and I only recall the actual death on one of them, and it was quite awful. So I'm kind of curious if your clients actually experience the moment of death itself, and
Curious that you would
also
say that.
if they feel
Hmm.
the emotions behind it, and then those that there might be people that are fearful of having regressions because they're going to have that moment and it's something in the past they don't want to go, they don't want to know, or maybe they were killed for a reason. Maybe they did something horrible and they're concerned or embarrassed that they're going to uncover something about themselves. And so
Well,
they
how much
resist
time
it.
do I have? Let me just answer really quick. I
Go
was
for
in
it.
Sure.
I was in a theater of the round, and there was about 150 people, and it was a lot of questions. And this man at the top, of course, I don't see very well without my glasses on, so I saw this larger man stand up, and he was like the last row,
Uh-huh.
and he said to me, "All my life, I've had trouble with my stomach," and of course, it overwhelmed me. And in my hand, I had this large sword, and I reached back, and I went like this to him, right in his gut. And he felt it, and he says, "Is that my death?" And I says, "You'd never let that go."
Ooh.
And so
Mhm.
another death happened. I went into partnership with Dick one time, and he wanted to see if I was able to pick up um, past life deaths, like, or what's wrong with your body and why you have problems with it. I can, and nothing I do, and I just let's not go down
Yeah.
that road, right? And so he met up with a couple of girls, Jill and Suzanne, I'll call her. Anyway, so I was looking at Suzanne, and I saw what we call the gladiator look. And this guy, I didn't feel it, but I saw a sword go from her left hip all the way up to through the rib cage. And I went, oh my gosh, it's like it startles me, right? And so I was telling her this, and we were outside in a cafe, a little tiny table, and it was Fair Oaks, California. She started taking her blouse off, and I went, whoa, wait a minute. So she was born with her stomach, everything was mixed up in there. And so they had to open her up from her left hip all the way, and she had a scar going clear across her whole body. And so the wound of that life came forward, and her innards were all screwed up.
Yep.
And I thought, yeah, right.
Wow.
I believe that. Yes.
So all these years I've been doing past life regression, I get so many spontaneously like that. When I'm reading, I mean, we don't have time for me to talk about everything. So I can talk about this one really quick. But okay. So the past life regression, I do not encourage that death scene because it's not necessary. And I did have Sharp California Haunts. We did, as with Matt, I did that because she wanted me to, and that gave me the idea. Let's offer it to Matt. But I think she did die in that life, and I wasn't wanting to, I don't think it's necessary. A lot of people just die, and it doesn't really accumulate with all the experiences. But I do want them to be here, and I want them to be in the afterlife looking back on that life. And I feel like that's a really important step to identity of why did you live it? Absolutely. And quickly, this is also interesting. It's not always a person that's getting the past life. It's the person that usually accompanies them or is within visual or hearing of me. So twice it happened when I was in, before I moved out of California in 2002 and 2003, a gay couple came, these two ladies. And saying it quick because we're going to run out of time here. So the one lady went back to Egypt, and she was a very beautiful, young, wealthy beyond means. And she was putting a reef in the river. She was walking up, and it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, talk about historian. I am crazy historian. And I'm looking at everything. I'm looking around what she's looking at, and I'm going, wow, look at this gold on her. And it's just like, I was just having a crazy time, and she could see this, and it was like, and she's putting this big reef in the water, and she turned it, and for some reason I saw that at the end of her life. Don't know what happened. So we brought her back, and I says, what do you think that's about? And I'll tell you really quick. In this life, she was the masculine and very aggressive. And all her education, she never got the job she wanted. It was always a failure. Her partner, this sweet young thing, you ever heard people that know people that can do no wrong? She had promotion. She had money. She started weeping terrible. And she says, didn't you know I was a slave at your feet? It wasn't the rich girl in the past life. It was the poor girl who had to have that past life. She couldn't figure out her obligation and why she put up with her aggressiveness in this life because she was the slave. But in this life, she was the success. It wasn't more than a couple of years later and they did break up. And I felt really bad. I thought, oh my God, did I do that? You don't want to, you don't want to be that. And so the one I want to tell you, this is really fun. Where was I living? I think I was living in Tucson. And this couple called me up, and they were a sweet young married couple, just really brand new married. And they were on the phone talking to me, each of them. And they started talking about past lives where they would meet up and everything. But the only link I got was her. And she was, remember in New York, they had the Smithsonian, right? So I said to her, oh my God, this is so fun. I get really excited. I'm all over the place. And in my mind, I saw her as a young dark-haired man with a white lab coat on, standing next to Henry Ford. And they had their picture taken. In those years, it was a big camera, And they were standing with a platform and with a handle going up of the first car. And I told her about it, and her man was all interested in electronics, mechanics, and all that. So who was he? Didn't matter. They went to the Smithsonian, and they found that photograph. They called me back and said the Smithsonian has the photograph. She recognized herself in that. And that made me think of you. I didn't know we were going to go here. But I don't know how all these memories can be packed in here. So I think it's quantum
Yeah.
physics. You bring it up, I'm going to go back to
That's
incident.
awesome.
But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have time for tonight for me to talk about these head turners, I call them. But that
Uh-huh.
proved to me I'm not sane.
No.
You know, like I get the slave girl. I can't make it up because the woman
Yeah.
I was repressing saw
Mhm.
herself as that princess as I did.
Yep.
And it was amazing. I
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted, and I later I found out I did have a life there, but the vegetation, the palm, the date trees, the palm, all just like, oh my gosh, we don't have anything here. We don't have anything like that here. So much
Huh.
grandeur. I couldn't hardly believe it. I got like
Wow.
crazy. And here's
Yeah.
this poor slave
Yeah.
girl. We both ignored her.
Mhm.
And her feet going like this.
It's
I'm sorry.
amazing how your past lives really affect your current life. And when you
Yeah.
understand your past life, you understand kind of what you're going through in this one.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. But that's
Yeah,
the kind of work that
definitely.
you do. It's just fascinating to me that
I
you're,
love it. I do.
ugh,
I do.
it's
And
incredible.
well, it's just part and parcel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and someone said, "Well, what do you think about doing all these things?" I said, no one ever told me I couldn't, so I just
Yeah.
opened the door and tried it. And I started in here, and I was kind of like the new kid on the block in 90. I started in 90, and they say,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
"There's a strange person over there. Y'all just check her out," you know. And I remember thinking, "Am I strange? I just like this. This is fun, you know. This
Yeah.
was a hobby." And then
Yeah.
one day I got too busy, and someone said, "You got to make a choice. It's either that job, telephone company, 24 years, money. I had as
Mhm.
much money as ever. Health insurance. Oh no, I just walked away from."
Yeah. That takes a
Mhm.
lot of chutzpah right there. Let me tell you. I know
Well,
that feeling.
when you
I
have
tell you,
cancer, and Matt and
Mm-hmm.
I've
yeah,
talked about this,
Yeah.
you look at how, and I talk about this. I give a lot of lectures on this.
Mm-hmm.
What if God said to you, "I want to give you 5 more years." In 87, everybody
Mm-hmm.
died of cancer. My mother started grieving when she found out I had it.
Mm.
She come and she was grieving, and I went, "Ooh, am I going to die?"
Mm-hmm.
And I got divorced. So I got November, December, January, my surgeries, treatments, ended on my birthday, April 30th. I left my husband July 1st. I said,
Nancy,
if this is, huh?
Nancy, did you opt for normal, conventional treatment, or did you go
No.
for alternative medicine?
In those years, you had chemotherapy.
That was
Yeah.
it.
Which is
Yeah.
We're
death
talking
sentence in my opinion.
87.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
those years, they didn't want to give it to a 39-year-old.
Yeah.
And because
Mhm.
they said it would kill me. And so
Mm-hmm.
we'll watch you every 6 months for 15 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
That woke me up. That woke me up.
Can I tell you
So,
just a quick, interesting thing that happened to me? When my father passed away, he passed away in my arms, and he had squamous in his left ear. And when he passed away, the cancer died with him, and his ear immediately just went right back to healthy. And it
I've
was
never heard that.
fascinating. Yep, fascinated me. I just couldn't
yeah.
believe that happened because I was like, "Mom, look at his ear. Look,
So the
it's
cancer
gone."
was a mean for him to have to,
Yep,
for him to be able to get out of his meat jacket
yep.
and,
That's
and
exactly.
go do
Evidently,
this. Yeah.
Yep,
Mhm.
that's exactly
evidently.
it. Yep. But
I keep
that's
Mhm.
telling
fascinating.
people I got into this kicking and screaming because I don't like the word psychic. Oh, ouch,
Yeah,
ouch. I call
yeah,
myself an intuitive. I talk
Mhm.
myself into a
yeah.
counselor,
Sophia
everything.
can relate.
Sophia's evidently relating.
Hello.
Yeah,
Witch. Yeah, that's
And
always
yeah. Oh,
fun.
yeah. I'm
That's
sure you
but I
fun.
heard
was
that
having
one.
so much fun. I do
Yeah.
these events and I end up screaming, yelling, "Oh my God, did I say that?"
Oops.
In groups of people. I used to give big talks. Sorry,
Sure.
big at the
Can
Uh-huh.
conventions. I
can
had this
we?
group
I
of
know.
200.
I know we're.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
see, I
I don't
told you
know
not
what
to
your
get me
time.
started.
No.
No, I love it.
We're fine. We're fine, Nancy. Just long as you're okay. You let us know when you
I
have to
just
bow
warm up
out.
there
But
for an hour, everybody. Just
there's just
Matt has to slow
there's
me down,
I love it.
Mhm.
yeah. Let's talk about soul families for a moment, shall
Okay.
we?
Mm.
And let's talk about the fact that some of us seem to, at least in Laurie's case, not mine this time around so much, other
You're
than
talking
my
about Laurie
brother.
sitting next to you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
In Laurie's case, you're talking about
there's
Laurie.
some
Okay.
really well because hers is different than mine. I found out recently that most of my family were not part of my soul family.
Oh, sure.
Most of them, when I found out, I don't have any past lives with any of them, except for my brother, Frank. Now, Laurie, on the other hand, was her grandfather. I
was my father's father.
Yeah, she was her
and I was
father's
the complete
father.
and polar opposite of the person I am today. Absolutely, in every possible way. The complete opposite.
Absolutely. So what would be a question for Matt and I?
Well, the question would be, with both of you and the people that you've interviewed on your shows and some of the interaction, how common is that for a family to have been different roles together in different timelines or in different multiple dimensions, but different roles? Like in here, I'm the daughter, but over there, I was the mother, and over there,
I think more than you know. More than you know,
it's
Theresa.
mind freaking blowing.
Yeah, is that common or not common?
Oh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dalibor.
I will talk about it, but I want Matt to answer first. I don't want to ignore him.
Well, you're gonna get up to you're gonna be on deck pretty quick. So just this is not a I find it fascinating, but this is not an area of like linked past lives and things that I have done much work in. So
okay,
where I find it interesting, I don't have any necessarily data or experience to give you good direction one way or the other. I find it fascinating and I love hearing these stories, but I haven't had a lot of direct experience on that. So
I was just wondering if you had ever interviewed anybody or had come up.
It hasn't come up a lot. I mean, I've heard it a little bit, but not a lot. A lot of people will share their own experiences, but I haven't had a whole lot of people talking about links to friends and family members. My understanding is that souls travel together in the etheric realms. They're all together and they've worked with each other lifetime after lifetime. And so we'll switch roles and we'll say, well, okay, you be the dad and I'll be the child, and we'll work things out that way. And I think that's where the soul connection comes in. And just because you're not experiencing it, Theresa, doesn't mean that it's not real or not happening. Because I've experienced it. I know that's part of my lineage, and I believe it's in the blood as well, in your DNA, and it's carried through. I will add that, I guess from my experience too, and that is that I do believe there is something to this. If there's unfinished business, if things don't get resolved, somebody, one key person passes on, that then carries on into a relation. I mean, just my opinion, but I do believe that does get carried on then into a relationship next time around.
Well, I've heard about people who have married each other.
I think it's very common. It's just that I don't think the research is going in that direction. In other words, since people aren't looking for connections between shared past lives, that's why we don't hear more about it.
Well, I've actually heard of people who have...
True.
Yeah, I've heard people that have married each other over and over again, switched roles as husband and wife through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a trust between them.
Yeah.
Let me give you
what do you think, Nancy?
Well, this is part of what I do. People call me up and say, what is my connection with?
Yeah.
And then I have to feel the vibration, see if I can find a chord between them or some kind of connection. So I've read all of Edgar Cayce. I was part of the Edgar Cayce development class in the 87, 88. My first past life regression for me was in 87 before I even got in this, because my mother was in it. Nancy, something's wrong with you. Get into this now. And I, had my first past life regression. So I had this one lady. Clearly, you understand the one about the gay couple. They were in each other's lives over and over. And I do believe we could switch back and forth. So I want to talk first one. I was entertaining a group of people in Fair Oaks, California, and I walked in, and this little girl was sitting on the couch, and she was waving to me. It's just like 9, 10 years old or whatever. And I looked at her and went, oops, because I saw the figure of an old man inside, realizing she was that old man, and went in the kitchen, met the hostess. I went, oops, because their lives are flicking off her back. And I says, did you know your granddaughter is your father? And they all erupted. She says, oh my gosh, we were all wondering if you're going to catch on to that, because evidently little girl's been telling them that.
Yeah.
And so we do intermingle. So Edgar Cayce believes that as a witness a tree, branches out with the little spigots coming off. We are one branch. So these people, Laurie and Theresa, you already proved to yourself in the research. Oh my gosh, you've had life. It was back there. So no wonder you catch up here. So this other lady calls me up and she says, I am so alone in my life. And then I went through her family members and went, oh my God, this is tough. So in a prior life, they were connected. He said, I'm going to pick this life. I'm going to get all screwed up. Would you mind coming before me and witnessing that I can fix up my life? Her only role, even though she married and had these kids, her brother in this present life, she was only here to witness his progress. That was the only reason she was born in this family.
Interesting.
So don't make a big deal about it, because you don't know. Like Matt and I, we felt that connect. I says, for some reason, I think I need to connect with you. Who knows that 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 generations somewhere else, because we get along so well, we kind of mesh okay, and maybe it's the analytical side of our brain. Who knows? I mean, but there are people in all these years, I've only met 2 or 3 people that I couldn't read. And it was almost like the universe said, nope, you're not going to do this. And I've actually told them I would read them because the universe told me I can't.
They're not.
So there's all these connections. Yeah. I think it's so varied. Like I said, it's so varied. Now, one more thought here. I do believe we have what we call independence. So I married my first husband and we had 2 children. Neither one of us are connected to either one of us. They come in for our biological. My daughter went into one field. My son went into the one I'm in. And I do believe they come in for biological and my intuitive ability. Both of them are. And so they needed that biology. Now, who are they connected with? Their spouses and their children. They just needed us to get to an end result.
Right. Yep.
And
incarnate.
Yeah.
And so even in my own family, I thought,
that's the body I want. That's the body I need. That will help me meet my goals. Yep.
Yeah. So we're all just friends. I go, gosh, I know my kids never call me. And I got to a place of thinking they really don't need me. I think I might need them, but that's not this lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really good with that.
I had a funny past life.
Healthy.
I'll just do this real quick. The investigation is interesting in its own right, in that it was a house where the previous owner committed suicide. The kids didn't know, and the child started getting blankets and stuff. And they're like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm getting blankets for the man in the next room here." Like, the invisible friend was described as the guy that killed him. But anyway, and it was nice. There was nothing like evil or anything about it or anything. But what was interesting was the parents told me that the daughter, she was like a 4-year-old girl, claimed to be a Civil War commander, and I just find this funny, and was all pissed off over, don't give me these dolls. What am I going to address? Where's my gun?
Oh my God.
I can identify with that.
I need to hear these.
The hell am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, exactly.
Now that happened with me.
That's crazy.
I am,
That's great, Matt.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm heterosexual. I don't have women. I have my friends, but all the time I was growing up, I would tell my mom I was a man. I never had a doll. I never played with girls. I was always with the boys. I played trucks. I was always on the bicycle. I never around. And I remember my sister liked dolls, and the stepsister that came along. And I would look at them thinking, what's wrong with them? Yet in this lifetime, I'm not gay. So it kind of made me, I look back and I go, well, I evidently evolved out of that. But I'm a very marketing business background, but engineering. I'm not a warm and fuzzy, girly.
You have a masculine energy then.
Masculine energy.
On a soul level,
It's pushed me, though, to be creative and push me into this business. And
feminine is the creative force. So you're here creating something out of the feminine energy and not the masculine. And so you're finding balance for the two.
It works. But I remember my mother wondering that if I was gay or not. Well, as soon as I got that first boyfriend, I know
You're like, I'm not gay.
She thought I was.
Yeah.
But she admitted
because
to me
that masculine energy. Yep, I get it.
But boy, that first boyfriend, she taught her a lesson.
And the 2 kids you had too.
I tell you, honey.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is
But-
Well,
fantastic.
it's taken society a couple hundred years here to recognize that just because somebody has masculine energy or feminine energy, it doesn't mean, oh, they're going to be gay, because
Yeah.
parents are fearful of that
Mhm.
because of old programming and stuff. So
And
they're
it reflects
fearful of
on
it.
the parents. The parents think it's something that
Now
they
you got to
did
remember
or
my generation.
yeah,
You
right,
know, maybe not
exactly.
yours.
That's a good point. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
I was born in the 40s. You know, so
Yeah.
Yeah, I was born in
There you go.
60, and it was still that way in the
60s for me.
60s.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
Girls
So,
couldn't do
I was-
this. Girls couldn't do that. You're not supposed
Yeah.
to do this. You're not supposed to do that.
I mean, the very
Watch
idea
me.
of putting a girl on a boys' team
Yeah.
just would have freaked them out in the 60s.
Oh, it did freak
It
them
just would
out.
have flipped. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, yeah, but just
Crazy.
because a person has a lot of masculine energy doesn't mean they're gay. Or just because they, it doesn't mean that in a previous life they were a male. But a lot of people
Yeah.
jump to those kinds of conclusions about people, and it's just not
Is what it
necessarily true.
is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
But I have a feeling that quite a few of us, I mean, I know for a fact, I have memories of being a male in a previous life, but usually mine are female. I've had a couple male, but mostly it's female. I identify more with the female energy. Sophia and I were having a chat a while ago together, and she says,
Okay.
"But you didn't come into this lifetime. Remember that? You didn't come into this life." She was sensing it. She says,
Mhm.
I sensed that you started in
Yep.
this life, in this now, with more of a masculine energy. I said, "Oh, I was a tomboy. You couldn't keep me from playing sports or climbing
Yep.
trees and I thought I was just as good as any other boy, you know." And I got really upset when people tried to say, "You can't do that because you're a girl." And I was
Mm.
always in competition with my
Mhm.
brother, who's like 6 or 7 years older than me. So I was always trying to be competitive with him. My sisters were 10 and 12 years older than me and on their own life, you know?
Hmm.
So I was always being compared to them, saying, "Why aren't you more feminine like your sisters?" You know? And that's because I was fighting with my brother over everything. So I had to develop
Interesting.
that side of me
Mhm.
that had to let that masculine energy come through in order to feel like I could make my way, because we were a very type of traditional family where the men had the say, and
Well, your brother
even though
was
my mother wasn't
excellent,
like that, though. My mother,
an excellent example. Your brother was an excellent example of masculinity, and I think
Yeah.
that's part of
Yeah.
where you get your
So
strength.
so when I got through my as I got into my teens, then I found that balance between the masculine and feminine in my life. But it wasn't until that time that I enjoyed myself, But prior to that, I felt trapped in a boy's, like I was a boy. Ah. But I wasn't a boy. I was a tomboy, but I wasn't a boy, you know. And so my life has been very feminine in this now, much more so than any kind of masculine energy. The feminine has kind of rise to the top and has helped me, in my journey. And I feel really comfortable with who I am as
Balance.
a female. Yeah.
It's
But I know
helping
in
you to
other
balance
lifetimes I've
this
had
life.
that male energy. Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
It's interesting
Yeah.
that I've been regressed, and in most of my past lives, I've been a male, except my most recent life where I was a female. And it's interesting that another panelist of ours, he also reported he's a male, and he reported that most of his previous incarnations were also male, but one female
Mhm.
that he remembered.
Right.
Mhm.
I just
In other
think there's
words,
so many layers that we could go
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Oh,
talk about different
definitely.
Yep.
lives.
Yep.
I was great.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to talk to somebody who was an archaeologist going to Peru, and I had a vision of an underground civilization long before we came around. And I
Mhm.
says,
Mhm.
I think there's been 3 or 4 before us. I mean, how many lives can you have, and how many men and women
Thousands and
sees
thousands.
sees himself as a warrior? You know how many warrior events were
Mhm.
happening in life, and the
Yep.
young kids got killed in Gettysburg.
Mhm.
43,000
Yep.
boys and men. They just
Mhm.
turn around and come back and go into the military again. My
Yeah.
sister and I talk about dying there, and my husband, this lifetime, saw us living in Tombstone, Arizona, and both of us had the connection with that Western times, and we didn't
Mhm.
get it until I was able to work there for a year. he came to town one day and went, bling, bling, I
Mm.
just saw us both in this town,
Huh.
but what role, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue.
Well, we figured it out. Laurie and I figured it out.
I know
You'll
Titanic.
do this. Well, that not just that. It's the repetition of a cycle,
Mm.
where it's like, well, I've already had an experience as a shaman 6 different times. Why am I still a shaman? Well, because you obviously didn't accomplish what you set out
Mm-hmm.
to find out or learn or experience, and you're repeating the cycle. You're stuck in a cycle until you clear up any kind of karma. It's kind
Or
of hard to
accomplish what
move
you
on
really
from-
want to do.
Right.
Exactly.
So I
your
think you're doing that
oversoul
now.
tells you,
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. You know, it was interesting, Matt. You talked about your fear of the deep water.
Yes.
And I had that for a very long time. Like I love boats. I love water. It's great, but I don't like deep water. Okay. It really makes me nervous. And I never really knew why until I discovered that Titanic lifetime. And I wondered if that was something that may have happened with you. Maybe not necessarily the Titanic, because many ships have sank, but
Oh my gosh, look at all the ships at the
remember all
beginning
of
of time.
Exactly.
It's funny because and I don't know whether there's a connection to this or not, but I fear water.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Yes.
When we did when I did a regression, there's
Pirate.
3. I've done a couple, but there's 3 that have come through, and the one I did with Nancy was because I was wondering, was there a shipwreck? It was a shipwreck. It was in the Caribbean.
Okay.
I do remember
near Jamaica.
Okay.
Yeah, and
you got some proof.
Yeah, and there were some, and then we looked at like roughly where the dates were, and there were some hurricanes in the area, and that. So I mean, it kind of lines up that it could all make sense with that. And it was more. I don't even know because it didn't get to the death, so I don't even know if that killed me. But what came out of that was I was bobbing out on, cargo out in the middle of the ocean, and so that's really my fear. Is I don't mind being on a boat. I don't want to be. I don't want to be bobbing in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, no doubt. Nor do I. Yeah.
And then the other one was interesting was medieval, or not medieval, but I always had an interest in England as well, Europe in general, but kind of
Knights Templar
times. And the other one we did, and I always had kind of interested in diseases and like the plague, and that was the other one that kind of came up. Was I was a very poor person with a lot of kids, and I kind of have a gut feel that it was plague, but basically, I on that one they did show the death scene. I was in a bed with all my family around me, and it was funny because that was the most miserable. That was the most miserable life if you look at just kind of what the life conditions were like. But that was one of the most peaceful ones because that was like big loving family, family, even though we were dirty and poor.
Right.
As opposed to like the sailor one, I was like reasonably successful, but bobbing out in the ocean alone. So
that family love.
Yeah.
Didn't you discover or sense that since you couldn't finish life with those family members that you had same family members come in this life together? Yeah,
I do believe, I don't know who's who, but I do believe that, that that's some of the stuff that has passed through and maybe
souls travel together.
I don't know if you guys know, if you watch the show, you probably heard me say they're adults now, but I have quadruplets.
Yeah.
And an older daughter. So, I have 5 kids. So I'm sure there's some webs and connections there.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Quadruplets. Wow.
That's a trip.
That's unusual.
And you know what? That's okay. You got them, got them all at once.
Yeah.
You see, back. I watched, if you take these past life, I watched my father drown on the Titanic.
Which was Laurie, everybody.
Yeah, that was
correct.
That's
true.
Then I drowned on a ship
in the next
Normandy.
life. Yep.
But I wanted to serve in the Navy and the Coast Guard in this lifetime. I wasn't afraid of water at all. I grew up in this lifetime on the water. My parents belonged to a boat and camping club. I have driven every kind of boat you can think of. I've sailed a catamaran.
You didn't have any fear when you died.
No
That's
fear.
The thing. You
I
knew
what's
what was
interesting.
coming.
Scuba diving. I didn't mind snorkeling. I had no fear of dying.
Right.
But it's interesting that the 3 of us up top neither of us have any children.
Right.
right?
I was going to add real quick.
What does that say? What does that say?
Yeah.
That says we're not here for the kids this lifetime. We're here for us.
For us,
On
yeah.
the drowning thing, I wonder
Yeah.
if you were drawn to that as kind of a way to, I saw this happen to my father, or I saw this happen to myself, I'm going to help others avoid that fate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does
Bingo.
the Coast Guard do? The United States Coast Guard helps rescue.
They rescue. Yeah, search and rescue.
Yeah, we're
That's
search and
interesting. I like
rescue,
that.
and we help to help. You know, we tow people back into shore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and also the health and healing bit, working in the triage. You know, it's just that's been a theme that's followed me through several lifetimes. It's the healing.
I like
We
that.
talked about that on one of our shows.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a recent one, by the way, that we were trying to. I was going to try to get Max Vision. He's not here tonight, but I was going to try to get him to do a remote viewing. I had a memory and shared it with Laurie.
Fascinating.
And are you all familiar with Project X? It was during World War II, towards the end of it and into the Cold War period, where there was training camps that the Americans and Canadians and others collaborated on to train people in clandestine operations. And so they had these training camps where they would teach you the language and the clothes, how to dress and how to speak the language of these different, they were particularly after the Nazis and Germans, but
so
there was
undercover espionage group.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they developed this Hydra communications network tower called the Hydra. And they were teaching the men and women from the WACs, you know, the American WACs and the Canadian CWACs women's group on how to use, because a lot of them had done the teletyping, but they were teaching them how to use the coding system in this Hydra communication system. And I didn't know any about this. I don't know crap about it. Okay. But I had this vision and I had a dream. And then from the dream, I got additional images. And I said, oh my God, Laurie, there we go again. We were both serving in that environment. I saw Barry Chad, but not the way he looks today, but I felt the Barry Chad energy. I don't know if he's still here, but I felt Barry Chad.
One of the
a member of our
Soul Tribe
community.
members in the chat. Yep.
Yeah, he's usually in the chat. And I also felt and saw Karen Kasparov, but not in the form she's in now in this reality. So Karen was there, Barry Chad was there, Laurie was there, I was there, and I think one or two others. And I kept seeing it from. So anyway, Laurie and I decided to do a lucid dream and go into it. We decided to go there, and because I was describing to her that it was a building that was very much like an H shape, H shape, and I explained the tower, the remote circular area for the theater, outdoor theater. I just described the whole thing, the cottages where we all lived together. I just described everything to her that I could remember. And then we did a lucid dream together where we went and explored it so she could experience it as well. And she picked up on some things. And then we started researching it and we found out what it was.
Yeah.
You know, we found out what it was by our names, right?
We actually found the names, and then we got on Google Earth and we saw the plot. It's no longer there, but we saw exactly where it was located. We saw pictures. Yeah, and it was just like a way to validate everything. So every time this happens, we end up validating all of it. And between her and I, we're like, we just know that that's what happened.
But it's another overlapping. It's another for me. It's another, and for her. Well, no, she wasn't it. Well, she could have been.
The time frame. You're linear. So yeah.
Which brings up.
Go ahead, Dalibor.
Which brings into question, like, is it possible to experience two lives at the same time without knowing it?
I believe
because we talked about this before.
Absolutely.
Because I've moved continents 8 times between the United States and Europe, and in each instance, I've recognized people that I thought were like people that I knew on the other continent.
Yeah.
Like literally
There's no way
ringer. And
I was Evelyn Davis at Project X, and I was Molly Evershed on the Titanic.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Normandy,
I love it.
at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
At the
Yeah.
same time.
Mhm.
And my mother was serving in the Red Cross as a volunteer during that time period, but she hadn't
Ooh.
given me birth yet. She
Mm-hmm.
had not given me birth yet. Now I drowned as Molly Avershad and had no offspring. I don't know what happened to this Evelyn Davis, but the point is that at some point I was born in 1960.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? So this
Yeah. It's
time
hard
is
to
nothing.
fathom, but it doesn't mean anything. Linear time means nothing.
Yeah.
Except
Mhm.
And that's
when you're
happened with
human.
my ladies and gentlemen.
Has
Because I'll
it?
bring up a line.
Very good. Very good.
Okay.
When they passed
Valid.
over,
Yeah.
and they say, "Where are you?" I was asking where they are, and they're having
Mhm.
a life.
They're having another
And
life. Yeah.
They're
right
somewhere
as we're
else.
talking,
Yep.
yeah, just like.
See?
Mhm.
I knew it.
And
Yep.
one of them was on a ship in the Mediterranean, a pirate ship, and I don't watch those kind of movies. And
Mhm.
I was telling my husband it was the size of Nina Pina and the Santa Maria, and I gave him details of what the ship looked like. And Larry, my husband, did the research because he loves that. And I wasn't aware that they covered the outside of the boats with tar. All I told Larry was it was icky looking black stuff.
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
I
Make
was
them
able to give
seaworthy.
description
Mhm.
of him being on the ship. But I
Yeah.
was talking to his sister in this current time, and he was energetically connected to her to show me where he was. That's why he's not showing up at her house, and she felt like he was neglecting her. Well, let me have a
Wow.
life here.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
Lady
It's a long
Lady
story.
Spitfire is asking, is there any
s-
exercises to strengthen these types of gifts, Nancy?
I think Sophia had to add to
Yeah,
that.
please, Sophia.
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Sophia.
It's all right.
I didn't
Okay.
hear
Meditate.
her.
Go
You
ahead.
had something to say before we talk?
Yes,
Someone-
go, Sophia.
No, it was to the question that lady.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Spitfire. Meditate, get into the ecstatic state, rinse, repeat, practice.
Practice is the
That's
number
how
one
I
thing.
did it.
And
Mhm.
whether
Just like
you
a muscle.
it's a muscle, and I
Mhm.
make it easy. Like, do I go to the store today or tomorrow? Is the mustard going to be there today and tomorrow?
Mm.
When you get out on the road, will I find parking here or there?
Mhm.
Everything you can
Yeah.
think of, ask a question. And that
Test
also builds
yourself.
my-
You're
Yeah.
a remote viewer, Nancy. Don't you think remote viewing is an excellent way? John Max Vision Remote Viewing has a channel. He's in our community, and he has Friday nights and Saturday nights where you can go and practice your remote viewing. That opens you up for the vision part of it, the clear
I think
vision.
you have to practice.
You
Absolutely.
do.
There's so many
Mhm.
different ways to do it. I don't
Mhm.
go by,
Yep.
I don't need what most people need. So during Char's show, just as an example, because it's most recent, she had people write in and who's standing next to them, kind of a thing.
Mm.
And this one young man, he said he was in Pennsylvania. I really never traveled a lot there. I've never been there.
Mhm.
And when I went to the house, I backed out. It was a yellow house, square, but there was a row of spirit men around the house, just a big row of them. And I went, oh, I mean, what am I seeing, right? And I was looking down on the house, and I says, I don't know why, but these men have lined up to let me know they're there. And he says, well, I'm next to a mine that had a big cave in, and it killed about 15 people. And so I was seeing the men line up because they want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
that's a
Mhm.
form of remote viewing.
Mhm.
Char just sends me a picture of a house, but sometimes he'll just send me a square where the front door is, and that's all I really need.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Because what I do is I tap into her in the event,
Mhm.
and while she's going through it, I've already told her where to go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I do it
fascinating.
differently, and I
Yeah.
think the latitude is very possible. People who have somewhere else gone and stood, yeah, I can do that. I can just look through their eyes and see what's around them. But I wouldn't tell her
Sure.
what town they're in.
Yeah.
So I think every aspect of remote viewing is important.
Mhm.
The first time that happened, it was like 93, I think it was. And I remember this, John called me up and he says, my sister wants you to visit her and tell me she's okay. And he gave me the name of the town on the East Coast. That was New York, but it was a peripheral, and I can't remember. And I was on top of her house, 2-story house. And I went into the kitchen and she was doing the dishes. So it was late. But before I went into the kitchen, there had been some terrible catastrophe. House was okay, but everything around it was burnt down. And I told him, he says, well, that's why I wanted you to check on her, because they had this big fire and they saved her house, but nothing else.
Hmm.
And I went, oh, is that what I was supposed to find out? Well, She was doing the dishes. She's just fine. Did you call her today?
Yeah.
And that incident taught me that our mind is not just part of us. Like I
We are
blend with
part of the
people, I get tired,
collective.
that we
Yep.
can go elsewhere. And
Mhm.
someone said, well, you're a remote viewer. And I went, duh.
Mhm.
I didn't.
Mhm.
I still do,
Question.
duh.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
You
Question.
think?
Dalibor.
Question.
Dalibor.
We've been talking about basically every incarnation being one biological human having one spirit or one soul. Like, is it possible, in light of the fact that in recent years we've been hearing a lot about these NPC people, that you could have like fractional spirits,
Right. And
where
that's
it's
the
like,
today's
and
theory.
one
Mhm.
spirit, one spirit inhabiting two different bodies,
Mm.
which the Matrix has determined are unlikely to meet, like one person living in the US, one person living in China,
Right.
Uh-huh.
and one spirit controlling both bodies.
See,
Mhm.
that would explain Theresa's experience. I can address that. I know
Boom.
that I can go to a flash I had when I was, sorry, dyslexic. So I can go after my death, and I've been
Mhm.
after my death, and I've seen me in the afterlife, and I've had family come up and greet me, and I just, it's hard to explain what I was where I was. It was just amazing. But I was anyway. So I was there talking to people, and I felt whole. I didn't feel
Mhm.
like I was fragmented. At one time, people
Mhm.
said, well, there was a new thing coming out in the early 90s. It was called the walk-ins. And someone said, oh, you have to be a walk-in to change so 100%. Well, I've never been different. I've always been this person. I just finally
Mhm.
let it be recognized.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
my friend, I have a little friend in Auburn, California, and she says, I always know when Nancy's psychic because her vocabulary is better than yours. And I go, well, that's not nice. You know, my ego gets in the way. But I think the clarity comes through because you are talking from your higher self or
Yes.
somewhere else. Because when
Yes.
people watch me and my eyes shift or my voice changes a little bit, but I'm not
Mhm.
channeling or
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
right.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
you know,
That sounds familiar.
Yep.
comes pretty quick through me. That's why I have to record everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I'm unabashedly okay with that because, like I tell Matt and everybody else, if I'm going to talk to a spirit person, they're either going to be standing there or they're not. And the other day, I had a woman who was a widow by a year, and she was grieving, and she didn't care so much about her husband. She wanted her dead mother to show up. Well, the grandmother showed up, and after that beginning, the husband wouldn't want to come around because she's just making all the time and had to calm her down. Well, my mother would calm me down. I said, well, your grandmother's here. And the rest of the reading was dead. Like she was mad that the wrong person showed up. And I go, well,
Mhm.
I'm not going to say that just to make her happy.
Yeah.
I don't care
Exactly. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
eventually that would be important. So walk-ins a consideration. The latest is the fragmentation. I don't see why not. Other
Mhm.
than when I was already dead in the afterlife, I felt not that at all, as though I
Yeah.
don't feel any religion in the afterlife.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we create our souls. The other thing I pick up is this lifetime ego
Mhm.
is the
Mhm.
current lifetime personality when you pass over, but you
Right.
have full memory of everybody else. So if I
Exactly.
like myself in one of the lifetimes I saw, I could be
Mhm.
creating that one and be that
Yeah.
for a while. So it
Absolutely.
Yeah.
accumulates
Yeah.
like a deck of cards. Which one do you want to be
Yep.
now?
Yep.
And you can even go
Wow.
travel into
Yeah.
that time frame and relive with that life
Yeah.
because we have
Ooh,
access
I
to all
so
time.
get that. Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
Interesting.
it's similar to Well, there's also the concept of a split soul. There's some people say, "Oh, there's no such thing as a split soul," and then other people say, "Well, no, there's no such thing as a twin flames or twin spirits or."
Well, if you can have two souls inhabiting one body, and some cases of schizophrenia have more or less proven that this is the
Maybe that
case.
is what schizophrenia is in some cases. Maybe.
Yeah,
Crowded.
yeah, crowded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
I just think that
I'm
Be
gonna,
linear
myself.
time. I
I
just think that it
hesitate.
will. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just saying, I hesitate throwing this out here because this is where like people are going to think that's really weird.
I love it,
I
Matt. Go
almost have
for it.
this idea that, and again, this is a model. I'm not saying this is exactly how this works, but that your body and your brain is a receiver.
Yeah.
And your soul and what is you comes from without, not within. So in the case of schizophrenia, how I view that is the receiver is damaged in a way that it's actually receiving two signals. Also, I think
I
that's
love
the
that.
thing of like
Ooh, that
possession,
is brilliant.
possession and things.
Cool.
It's like another entity jumping your signal. So you're not receiving the, and that you and Nancy, Laura, like we're all very, very fine tuned. Like if you think of like a radio, that
A
signal
violin.
Yes.
received. And so I don't
Yes.
think when you get brain damage, it's not that your soul or anything is getting met. It's that the receiver can no longer get the fully signal to fully express yourself.
Makes a lot of
that's
sense.
beautiful. I love
That's
that.
Yeah,
just
brilliant.
beautiful.
Ah,
Just
Because
brilliant.
I didn't start having a lot of this until after that traumatic brain injury accident and near-death experience.
Ooh.
there you are.
Wow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I really think
So
from my research and experience, I really think there's something to that near death, touching the veil.
Yeah.
Even if you don't actually flatline it, I think if you just come close, for some reason, that opens things up.
Yeah.
Well, the stress of what
Agreed.
I went through.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's the conduit. It's the catalyst,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's only
Wow.
one connection that I had starting as a teenager. I was a young girl, and I was laying out in the field under the trees. I was skipping PE because I didn't want to play flag football, and
Mm-hmm.
and because I had been injured from it, and I just didn't want to put my body through it. So a bunch of us were skipping class, and it was over by a tree line, and I was just leaning against a tree, and I was dozing off, and the sunlight was right in front of my face, and this figure appeared before me, kind of in shadow. You know, when somebody's got a glare, all you can see is their shadow, not their features.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked up, and it was a man, and he was just stunning. He had the beard and the hair, and he was just muscular and stocky, and he was just standing there. And I was like, woo! Here I am, a teenager, and I was like, woo! And but at the same time, I was like, uh-oh, I'm alone. This is not a good thing. So I'm looking at him, and he just starts talking to me, and we're just chatting, and he says, I've always known you, and I'm with you, and I will never leave you. I will be with you always.
Ooh.
I said, oh, I have an angel, right? He's like, no, you're my heart. You're my sweetheart. I've no, we've all. He just appeared to me, and I realized I was having either a flashback to another time, or he was actually manifesting from another. In other words, you can cross timelines, or you can blend timelines.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he was my husband in another timeline.
Wow.
And I've had a relationship with him off and on throughout all my lifetimes. So I know there are multiple concurrent realities. So Dalibor, it's not necessarily that I'm in two places at one time, in the sense that if just this now, it's like I'm everywhere all the time, experiencing these things. I've never really left it, and we can and it sometimes they blend.
Go bleed through.
Sometimes they
Just
cross.
bleed
They bleed through.
Yep.
That's my take
Wow.
on it.
Fascinating. Well, listen,
Anyhow,
we're
we
coming
are
to the end of 2
Yeah.
hours almost. It's just been a wonderful conversation.
Almost. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Almost 2 hours.
Oh no,
I
no,
knew that was
Nancy,
gonna
we
happen.
loved it.
Hey, well,
It
at
happened.
least we didn't bore you guys. That
Oh no, not at all. Not at all.
No.
Fascinating and
I tell you,
such a
we've been
pleasure.
wanting to do this, and Matt and Laurie and I are going to get together next week, or when Matt's ready to chit chat about doing this more often, once in a while, get together and cross promote each other, get on each other's show, and we wanted to hook Nancy in because she and Matt do things.
She's
now
amazing. Love you, Nancy. Thank you.
Yeah,
Who said that?
thank you so
Such
much.
a pleasure. I did.
Oh. We just have fun at this. I do what I do.
Yes, it's just great.
Yes, it's
That's what I
fun.
do.
I know.
And there's so much. It's all different. Like you said, it's all energy.
Yeah.
But how you experience it in various different ways is what's fascinating.
Yep.
Talking about it, I think, helps open people up and say,
It
"Hey,
certainly
folks,
does.
we're not crazy. We're
Yeah.
not crazy."
What I think
Right.
is important is that
You know.
I've been watching the chat room. Thank you, everybody. It was fun seeing the notes. So when I got into this, I really had a rough time because I felt like I was too odd. And I started having people follow me around. We started at 8, and within a couple months, I had 50 every Friday night. It really was bizarre. And so one of the pastors said, well, you should read a book of somebody who has the same gift. And so Eileen Garrett, I read all about her. She didn't write very much, but I read up on her anyway. And so once you meet somebody or hear somebody, there's somebody like me out there. Oh my God. So you can do, we are not limited to, have fun with everything. And if anything, it's proven to me we do survive.
Absolutely.
I live with a golden hue because I know the secret. I know why we're here. So I love it. Thank
Ditto.
you. So when you live that way, I'm a human being. I have issues just like everybody else, but I pace myself. My cup, I just got it. It's a Target, everybody. It says inhale, exhale, my motto. So when I get into that, I've had medical things go on and adrenal gland, and what I do is say the fright and flight gland is working too much. And I keep saying over and over, it's not working. It don't, blah, 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 blah. I just put a negative to it. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. Or I say inhale, exhale, because it's okay to be me. And it's people like me that make you okay.
That's right.
So
I love
there
that.
has to be, like, I can't do this forever. It's got to be me out there. And if I can get somebody to say, oh, she can do all that, I can do that too. I just open up and go, what can I do next? And that's all it takes.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, do it all.
Yeah, you got it.
Nancy. Thank you for that. That's,
All right.
Okay, so folks, Matt Slozer of the Paranormal Channel. Sundays from 9 to 11, you're still doing the Sunday Night Dead program.
Yeah, Sunday Night Dead. We kind of it's not always 9 to 11. I kind of do what you guys. I start at 9, and it depends on the topic and how long it goes. But 9 o'clock. Paranormal Channel on YouTube. You can also look me up Sunday Night Dead on Facebook.
And both their links are in the description, everyone. So go check them out for sure.
I love that coverage that you did on the Manson murders. That was cool. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Fascinating stuff.
And then Nancy, you call your company Creative Solutions, your combined services.
It's hard for people to remember that. So I just go by NancyMatz.com, Nancy Matz author.
Make sure you check her picture out. There's other Nancy Matzes out there.
Unfortunately, there's a couple that kind of clone themselves, and it's not me if it doesn't have my picture on it.
There you go.
It's like I've gotten older, but I still look the same. So
you look great, Nancy. You really
follow them on Facebook. We have their Facebook links in there too. And actually, Matt, you had 2 Facebook. The one that I used to follow, well, I still do. And then I saw your other one, and I'm like, well, one of them is for Paranormal Channel, and the other is your personal Facebook. Yeah. So I ended up putting your personal one in the description because I had forgotten that the other one was tied to your Paranormal Channel. Yeah, so.
It all crosses over. I did the same thing.
Yeah,
it's too hard.
Well, I hope we can get together again sometime, especially if we have a specific story, Nancy, or maybe
I'm always open.
Next week, we're going to be talking about intuition next week's show for us. So please watch for the trailer, and we're going to get into all of that. But I want to thank our guests. Thank you so much, Nancy and Matt and Sophia and Dalibor, Theresa. Thank you all so much. And we look forward to seeing you folks again. And we'll catch your channel there, Matt.
Yeah, definitely.
Had a great time. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Bye, Matt.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.